Okay, so I've started our recording, and tonight, Tuesday night of Survivors Week, we have with us Lisa Rainwater, and she's a counselor at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist, and she's going to talk to us about a topic that comes up all the time, which is fear of recurrence and also scanxiety. So I am going to turn it over to Lisa and let her tell a little bit more about herself and start the program. This is a webinar format, so we cannot see you or hear you, but you can ask questions in either the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen or in the chat box. And then I'll be helping Lisa monitor the questions, and we'll try to get any kind of questions that are asked answered. We are recording this, and we will send the link out to everyone that was registered for Survivors Week. So you will have an opportunity to see this again. Well, Lisa, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Lindy. I'm glad to be here. Love to be able to come back and work with you and all of you who are joining tonight on Tuesday about 6 o'clock. Hopefully you've had some food to nourish your body as we progress today to talk about something that I think a lot of folks exhibit, both working with me individually and also in the groups that I run through Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist Cancer Patient Support Program. Just a little brief bio. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor associate. I'm working toward full licensure, which is 3,000 hours under supervision. And I've been working as a psychosocial oncology counselor for 3 years. I first started as an intern, having received my master's degree at Wake Forest University, and then graduated and was hired. And I have a master's in counseling, and I also hold a PhD from another lifetime that my focus and research was on existentialism, philosophy, and women's issues, a lot of which I bring into my counseling, and you'll see tonight I bring into this presentation in particular. So I would like to share my screen, and it's going to be this one. Okay, does that work for everyone? Everybody seen the screen? Yes? Okay, so this is the topic for the evening, and when Lindy invited me to come and speak, I thought, I have many discussions with my clients when they come in and talk to me about, oh, I have a scan coming up, or I've got my labs, and it's something that a lot of people face once they've received their initial diagnosis. Today, I'm going to go through some things, the objectives for tonight's webinar. We're going to address what if, living with uncertainty, scanxiety, why, the prevalence, and then we're going to work through some of the ways to manage both fear of recurrence and also manage your scanxiety. And then we're going to dive into existential concerns, because at the root base of your anxiety and your fear of recurrence are concerns about existential issues, which are directly connected to quality of life. And we're going to wrap up by talking about the wellness wheel model, which is the model that I use when I lead groups over at Atrium Health. And we will end with a mindfulness practice. So what if, right? That's something I think that everybody thinks about. Once they've gone through treatment, they've even gotten clear scans, and the doctor or the oncologist says, well, we're going to have you come back in 3 months, or you go through a series of clean scans, and then they say, well, I think you can come back in 6 months. The what if is, well, what if I should come back in 2 months? Or what if I should come back in 1 month? Or why do I have to come back at all? I have one of my clients, she actually said to me that right after she got her diagnosis, she felt like the carton of a milk carton, which has stamped on it the expiration date. And she said, I know I've lived my whole life knowing that everybody lives and everybody dies, but for the first time, I actually thought I have an expiration date. And when I look in that mirror, I see It's fuzzy and I can't tell when, but I'm afraid all the time that I'm going to have my own date of expiration. And that plays into this fear of recurrence and how to live with uncertainty. What if it comes back? Managing this uncertainty, one of the ways that we can do that is to identify the emotions surrounding your uncertainty. Are you fearful? Are you sad? Are you worried? Maybe you're angry. Maybe you feel guilty. The first step toward managing uncertainty, managing anxiety, is trying to understand the emotions around it and acknowledging that you have fears. And it's absolutely okay to be fearful. We have loved ones, we have lives, we have professions, we have homes, we have gardens, we have dreams of the future. And anytime cancer comes into one's life, you have fear of, is this it for me? So to acknowledge the fears allows you to take control. Because one of the things that comes up repeatedly when I work with my clients is, I feel like I have no control over my life. I'm given dates for appointments, regardless of whether I can make them or not. I'm given times I have to be there. I am given the treatments that I need. I don't really feel like I have a decision over what I'm going to be treated for or how I'm going to be treated. All of my power has been turned over to my oncologist. And hopefully you have a trusting relationship with your oncology team. And giving them control over your life is something that you have to build trust over. But you can also take some control back of your own life, which sort of re-empowers you. Healthy choices, for example. Are you eating healthy? Cancer Services has a wonderful, wonderful nutritionist, and she does a podcast, and she has a website, and she has recipes, and it's Julie Lanford. And I encourage you, if you haven't reached out to her, to reach out to her. What types of nutrition should you be eating, and how can you change your diet to make healthier lifestyle changes? Are you exercising? And we'll talk about exercise in a moment, but even if it's walking down to the post box to get your mail, you're moving your body, you're getting activity into your life. Limiting alcohol, cutting tobacco out of your life, all kinds of things that allow you to take control when you sometimes often feel like you have no control. And once you get some control back, you can reduce some of that stress, because stress can arise and bubble up and sort of float around the surface and maybe even come back as ruminating thoughts when you're stressful. And having some element of control and empowerment that you can hold in your hands and say, oh, I had a protein, a vegetable, a starch, and 8 glasses of water today. I feel like I did something good for my body, can help you reduce that stress. Another thing that is really important when you've gotten through treatment is to commit to a follow-up care plan. I receive, not often, but I do, I receive calls from oncologists who are concerned because patient A or B missed their scan, their 6-month scan, or missed their 3rd-month scan, and the patient had exhibited at the time anxiety, and is concerned that the patient isn't going to come back, and makes a referral that I reach out then and perhaps counsel the person if they consent to doing so. If you can commit to a plan, you also have some control over that, right? You know what's going to happen. You know that it's on the schedule. You know the day. And as the day comes forward for your scans, which we'll talk about in a moment, you're better able to prepare. Another way to manage your uncertainty is what you're doing tonight, right? You're joining a support group. This is more of a webinar base, but I know many of you are also members of support groups, either through Cancer Services or through other hospitals or through the groups that we lead at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist. Joining a support group is a way that you can talk to people who have perhaps not the same diagnosis as you, but they have life experiences that are similar. I'm sure all of you have felt at times the support and love of friends, of family, of colleagues, but also felt as if you were alone in your journey, because no one really knows what it's like to be fatigued. It's not being tired. It is an absolute overwhelming sense of your body, your mind, your spirit is just completely kaput. If you haven't gone through cancer treatment, you might not really understand what that means. finding support amongst others who have similar journeys is a way to manage your uncertainty. You can meet with a counselor. We have counselors at Atrium Health. I know that there are other hospitals in the region. Novant has counselors, social workers, psychologists. Many of us have been trained specifically to work with people going through cancer treatment, work with caregivers from the beginning of diagnosis all the way through survivorship and beyond. And there's also people in the community that are very adept at working with folks who have adjustment difficulties through life transitions. So meeting with a counselor, even if it's a brief counseling relationship, can become a therapeutic alliance between you and another human being. And finally, talk to your oncologist, talk to your provider. It's important to talk to your provider and identify your concerns so that they hear and understand where you're coming from, and you can be a key player in your treatment plan and follow-up care. Another way that we're able to help patients going through cancer treatment and who may in fact be experiencing some fear of recurrence is to engage them in intellectual curiosity, intellectual well-being activities. So artistic endeavors, research, maybe you love building and you really love to build a deck on the back of your house, but you don't really know how. You can stir up that curiosity by going to YouTube and Googling to see how somebody builds a deck and what are the building permits and the screws and the wood and the drawings. And it suddenly, as Eric Fromm writes, creativity requires the courage to let go of certainties. It also encourages you to let go of uncertainties because you suddenly are brought into a whole new experience. It invigorates the mind, increases your curiosity for life, enhances memory power, recall, and concentration. So if any of you have gone through chemotherapy or radiation or even a long surgical procedure which required being anesthetized, you may have what folks call cancer fog or chemo brain or radiation brain. And we also know that the brain is plastic. And through exercise, much like when you exercise muscles, you can enhance your ability to bring back your memory recall and concentration, and doing things that are different, divergent thinking is beneficial to that process. It also helps improve your critical thinking and decision-making skills. And we'll talk about that a bit later. But when you're thrown into what's called oftentimes cancer land, nobody gives you a book and says, here's how you do it. Much like caregivers are never given a book and here's how you do it. You have to think on your feet. You have to make decisions. You have to use critical thinking to get through all of the muck to arrive at a decision that is good for you and works with what your doctor is recommending. And intellectual curiosity and well-being can help facilitate that. It also enables one to be more productive and equipped to handle life challenges. So whether it's a cancer diagnosis or fear of reoccurrence, being in this area of reading, of researching, of creating, of being curious helps you be more productive because it engages you in life. And that's behavior activation and behavior modification. So asking your provider, this information comes from cancer.net, which is a fantastic resource if folks haven't used it in the past. These questions were provided on the website. So when you talk to your provider, it would be great if you could write some of the questions down that you want to have asked. But if you have fear of recurrence, here's some of the questions that you can ask. One would be, what follow-up care plan should I follow to watch for a possible reoccurrence? So is it going to be every 3 months I come in for a scan, or is it every 6 months? How often do I get my lab work? Where do I go to get my lab work? How do I get my results? When am I going to see you again? I also recommend to everyone that if you have access to your portal, well, first, try to actually schedule your scans and your lab work the same day that you're going to see your oncologist. It takes the waiting game out of it, which is an increased Scanxiety, you got the scan, now you're waiting to find out what the results are. So if it's at all possible, schedule both at the same time. Also, if you can't for some reason get it scheduled at the same time, I know at Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist, we are sending out lab results and scan results to patients' portals well before they're meeting with their oncologist. My recommendation is, unless you've gone to medical school and you can read a scan and you can read lab results, it's probably better that you hold off. Because you might read something and not know what it is. It can increase your anxiety. And then you could wait days or even weeks before you speak to somebody. So if you have the patients or you want to practice the patients, it's oftentimes more beneficial to not read what's in the portal than if you read it. Another question you might ask is, what is the likelihood of the kind of cancer I have returning? Some cancers have a higher recurrence rate, others don't. That's a question that you can ask. What symptoms of a cancer recurrence should I watch out for? This is an important one because once you've had cancer and once you've gone through treatment, your body has changed and your digestive system may have changed. Your cognitive abilities may have changed for a short period of time until you get out of chemo fog. And because you're hyper aware and hypersensitive of your body, as you should be, nothing wrong with that, but you might start to pay attention to symptoms on your body and you might immediately jump to, is that cancer? Has cancer come back? Has it spread? Knowing what symptoms you should look out for can help reduce some of that anxiety of recurrence. Another good question is, which doctor should you talk to if you suspect recurrence? Some oncologists will say, go to your PCP. Some will say, come directly back to us. Talk to your oncologist to find out what he or she prefers. Another question you might ask a provider is, who can I talk to about anxiety or worry that I experience a cancer recurrence, or what support groups or counseling services are available? Well, you're here, so you must have asked the right question from someone, because you're here tonight spending time with others for an hour and a half to learn more about this topic. But if you need a referral, you can always ask an oncologist, and they have these nifty cards, at least where I work, and they have information on how to put a referral in. You go through a triage system of a short, brief question with another counselor, and then she will then route you to somebody who specializes in what you've presented as things you'd like to talk about. And I promise you, it's not scary. And our whole goal is to provide a safe space for you to come and explore your emotions, explore your feelings, and help you find some power and control back in your life through managing anxiety. So I'm going to pause here for a second for a moment of contemplation. And my question to you is, what do you do to reduce stress or fear of recurrence? And if you could put those in the chat, Lindy is going to, I think, pop on and read some of those. And just so everybody knows, we're not able to see what you post. Nobody knows who's posting. Well, maybe you, I don't know, Lindy, maybe you can answer that question. I don't know that.
I think if you do it in the chat, I definitely can see. But I won't announce who's asking what.
Okay.
So the Q&A and the chat are both open right now for responses. So a few responses are coming in. It says that one person says they go on a walk. Another one is going on a walk and sitting by a creek, listening to the cool water running, playing with my dog, exercise or doing a home project, gardening, reading, exercise, talking to friends.
All great ones.
Read, take a walk, and practice Tai Chi, which helps you breathe correctly and gives you more energy. Go outside, play with the dogs, walk, go to a new place, meditate. Bike, meditate, hike, crochet. So some great ones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. Lots of similarities, right? So we've got walkers, we've got bikers, we've got readers, we've got gardeners, we've got folks who find social connections important. And just so happens, I'm going to be talking about the benefits of mindfulness walking. So maybe this is something you can include on your next walk. And those who haven't participated in walking as often, maybe this is something that you would find interesting. So we seem to have a dog theme going on tonight. So luckily here we have this person, and this person has a dog, and the dog is looking at the tree, and we all know what dogs do with trees. He's very mindful of the tree. Either he's going to sniff it and read the neighborhood news, and he's probably going to leave a mark so the next dog that comes by can also read the neighborhood news. This poor person here, however, has a mind full with 2 L's. Everything and anything is cluttering around in the person's mind while they are holding a cell phone. So my recommendation would be to think about engaging in a mindfulness walk. Oops, I'm sorry. One thing we know, and there's been research on this, is that it stimulates blood circulation and blood sugar levels. So if you're engaging in mindfulness walking, you can have health benefits. And mindfulness walking maintains the 5 senses. The first is, and if you are suffering from neuropathy or you have mobility issues, it's not the distance that you want to go as much as what you're experiencing while you're on the walk. So you're going to first think about, give you 5 minutes. I'm going to walk for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, you're going to focus on your 5 senses. So let's say the first minute, you're going to look at everything around you. What do you see? The colors. It's spring. The colors are gorgeous this time of year in North Carolina. So look at the textures, the colors, the lighting. How does the sun dapple or the moon shine down at nighttime? So sight, you're going to listen to, what do you hear, right? You're going to focus on, maybe there's a dog barking. Maybe there's children playing in a playground giggling. Maybe there's a baby crying. Maybe there's a scooter going by. Maybe there's birds chirping. What do you hear? The next one is, what do you taste? So if you're walking where I walk, up in Miller Park, we have wild blackberry bushes, and they are just starting to ripen. So if I'm going on my mindfulness walk in the park, I might actually get to taste some of those wild blackberries. What do you feel? So are you wearing shoes or sneakers, or are you walking through blades of grass? Are you walking on gravel? Is there a breeze blowing by? All those kinds of things can help get you grounded and focused on the here and now, where you are presently. And finally, what do you smell? There's so many bizarre, wonderful, exquisite smells going on when spring comes. Focus for 5 minutes on a walk with those 5 senses, and you're going to find that it stimulates blood circulation and blood sugar levels. It's going to reduce anxious and depressive symptoms. It improves your overall well-being. It improves sleep. We know that sleep is directly connected to movement, and it doesn't have to be a lot of movement, but movement. It improves digestion. And it strengthens connection to your environment, making you feel like you are in a place of wellness, of wholeness. You're part of a community, and that improves your overall well-being. So moving on, Scanxiety. Why? This poor guy looks like he's been up for 5 days in preparation for his scan tomorrow, right? He's got bags under his eyes. He's unhappy. His brow is furrowed, and his eyeballs are just poking out, thinking, why do I feel like this? Well, I'm a language person, so I always like to go to the root of words. And anxiety comes from Latin, anxietas, or anxious, which means anxious, solicitous, distressed, or troubled. And it then combines, kind of like Legos from the Anglo, to distress or trouble. And then the one that I found most interesting is from the Greek, ancient Greek, to choke. So if anybody here, no need to raise hands, but if anybody's had a panic attack or felt very anxious to the point that it became very hard to breathe, you had your heart racing, your chokes closed up, there's a reason that anxiety was originated through the ancient Greek, the word to choke, because that is one of the physical symptoms that can happen through anxiety. You may actually feel like this person, a deer in the headlights moment when anxiety appears. I like to think of those little hashes around her as static electricity. She's frozen and doesn't know where to go, and she's sort of stuck in this static place. Return to wellness.co.uk is a great site for anxiety and wellness and all things medical. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to go check her out. She's got great drawings and has useful resources there. So when we talk about anxiety, it's a natural human response. And it actually has a biological purpose to protect ourselves. So way before we had trains and cars and automobiles and all of that, and we were out, living in caves, we used our fight, flight, and freeze mechanisms to arouse us in potential harm or danger. And as we evolved as a species, we continue to maintain flight, fight, or freeze. And they also come up when you have Scanxiety. One of the ways that you might experience it is you might be the person who flees from potential danger. That's the patient who I told you didn't show up for the scan, and out of panic, out of fear, out of anxiety, out of worry, decided to not go to the scan. And hence I got a call from Dr. X saying, I need you to call patient A and see if she'd come in to meet with you to reduce some of the anxiety so we can get her in for her scan. Some of you, like the deer in the headlights, might freeze and your emotions might shut down. You might become depressed. You might become detached from your caregiver or even detached from your medical team. You might feel shame or guilt. Why me? Why does this happen? I can't move forward. I feel paralyzed to do anything about my life. The final one is fight. Some people might want to fight back. You're angry, you're outraged, you're irritated, you're frustrated. And so these go in waves, right? So with regard to Scanxiety, they will come up to the surface and then they'll deactivate after your scan and after your results. Presumably, hopefully they're positive results, and they won't really come back up again. You're like, whew, you kind of feel relieved. Okay, I can wait 3 months. And then it's not really 3 months. It's usually about 4 weeks before the next scan that you start to feel anxious and have Scanxiety again. It can manifest itself differently in everybody. There's oftentimes physical manifestations of Scanxiety. You can have a heart racing, you can feel claustrophobic, or you can't breathe, it's shortness of breath. You can sweat, you can feel nausea. You can feel dizzy. It all depends on how your body responds to stress. So next chat question, how do you experience anxiety? And it can be Scanxiety or anxiety in general. And I'd ask Lindy to open up the Q&A or the chat box and see are you a flight? Are you a fleer, a fighter, or are you a freezer?
Okay, you can enter those in now. What about all the above?
Okay, yes, absolutely. You can have various waves of all of the above. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Can't sleep, feel nervous, sweating, stressed, Here's a freezer and a fighter,
Okay.
a freeze, um, fighter and a freezer, a flight, freezer.
Mm-hmm. Freezers often just want to crawl under the covers and not get out of bed, right? It's easier
Mm-hmm.
to not face what's happening.
Here's one that is more concern than necessarily worry.
Okay.
Trouble sleeping has been mentioned several times.
Mm-hmm. Anxiety, oftentimes, we call it the 3 o'clock in the morning window. Little
Mm-hmm.
anxiety light shines on you, and at 3 o'clock you wake up, or 3:30, and your mind starts racing, 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 racing with all the things that you'd hope to put to bed when you went to bed. So sleep can be greatly disrupted through anxiety. So I thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Is there another one?
Just one more that says freeze or shut down.
Okay. Okay. Lots. Sounds like a lot of folks are freezing. So Bruce Feiler is a lung cancer survivor who first termed Scanxiety when he was going through treatment in 2011. And he described it as an emotional roulette wheel that spins us around for a few days and spits us out on the other side. Land on red, we're in for another trip to Cancerland. Land on black, we have a few more months of freedom. If I could see all of you, I wonder how many of you would share that this is something you feel like. It's sort of you're at Vegas and you're throwing out the craps and you don't know if you're going to win or you're going to lose, but you know it's one or the other. And he talks about the emotional roller coaster that he also experienced while he was going through his journey. He has written several books. I have not read them, but they have gotten very good reviews. So if that's something of interest, recommend checking him out. Dr. Joshua Baumel has done a lot of research with people going through cancer treatment and looking at the term Scanxiety. And he defines it as the often debilitating anxiety patients with cancer experience in the periods surrounding imaging studies for their cancer. He also identified that it can be severe and can significantly decrease quality of life. So just to let you know that what you are feeling is real, to take the space here to validate that it is a scientific recognized experience, and it's not your fault. It is part of a huge system. I'd like to call it the medical machine, which we'll talk about in a second. One of my patients shared this meme with me. I can't tell you where she got it, but because I don't know. But she was trying to explain to me the difference between anxiety, which we typically think of as anxiety is worry about the future. And for her, it wasn't worry about the future. Scanxiety was not what might happen, but about what did happen. And she said, for us, it's not so much about worrying, it's about remembering. So for many people, you end up in the ED, there's something wrong, something's been going on for a while, you don't know what it is, you end up in the ED, you are put through myriad scans and tests, and you might end up before you go home with somebody telling you that they think you have cancer and you should set an appointment with an oncologist. So for her, it's remembering the first scans, which dictated her new journey as a cancer survivor. So I think it's important to figure out where your scan anxiety lies. Is it remembering what happened to you when you first got diagnosed, or is it somewhere in the future, I don't want to have more bad news, or is it a combination of both? And it could be the combination of both. So 21st century medicine, there are many benefits that have happened, medical advancements over the last, say, 5, 10, 15, 20, even 30 years that are beneficial. So some of the benefits of scans is that it allows an oncologist to track progression of disease. And we all know that the earlier cancer is found and diagnosed, the better treatment options there are and better chances of survival and extended lifespan. So those are the benefits, and those are the reasons that your oncologists are encouraging you to come back and be tested so that they can keep track and help you wherever you are on your journey. That doesn't mean, however, that there aren't detriments to scans, and there are several of them. And I just want to recognize them here, as we've just talked about anxiety, but they can be invasive. I don't know if anybody here in our webinar has gone through a bone marrow biopsy, but I've had women say it was more painful than giving birth to a child. They're painful, invasive. It can be degrading. The way that your body feels like it's an object instead of your body. When you go for a scan, they can be lengthy. I had someone share with me that she had a PET scan for 2.5 hours and was told to lie quietly and still for 2.5 hours. And she was very, very visually upset because how do you do that? You're being asked to do the unthinkable, the impossible. And then finally, there's a level of financial toxicity, right? It's not that you just go through treatment and your cancer's done and you move on with life. There's an added level of, I have to go every 3 months and I have to utilize my health insurance. I have copays. Sometimes the doctor has to argue and fight with the insurance company to get them to approve the scan. So the level of financial toxicity is also can be detrimental to the 21st century advancements in medicine. All this to say, how do we manage this scanxiety? What can we do? I like to look at it as this image here of the tiny little plant. It continues to grow through nourishment. So if you can imagine that this is your anxiety, but you're going to nourish other aspects of your life. So those are the things that are going to start to grow, and your anxiety is going to sort of start to, be there, but not present all the time. So one thing I encourage is to nourish your curiosity. Going back to that intellectual wellness that we talked about, develop questions to ask based on material sent to you in advance of your appointment. So if you've received information either via email, portal, or mail, and you read that and then come up with questions that you want to have answered, you're not only playing to your intellectual curiosity, but you're also taking some control over that visit. You're going to have answers and you're going to remember them because you wrote them down. Also, nourish your heart. We know that social wellness is a very important aspect of going through cancer treatment. So invite your caregiver or your neighbor or a friend to come and attend the meeting with you. I like to say 4 ears are better than 2. Some of you might experience what is a medical term, white coat syndrome, fear of medical doctors walking around in white coats. It can prevent you from being able to hear what they're saying to you. You can forget what they said. You're afraid to ask questions. People have high heartbeats and high blood pressure when they're tested. So having a friend to help you and then plan something enjoyable to do after the visit. Go for a walk at Renolda Gardens. It's free and it's lovely this time of year. Go get a sweet tea and, go for a walk in your neighborhood. Something that you enjoy. Go to a movie if you can. Having something on the other end of your scan and your visit with your oncologist is a way to help have hope for the future. You're going to do something different after this is done today. Nourish your body. Bring healthy snacks and water to your appointments. There's sometimes when at least our waiting room can seem like it's a 4-hour wait before you get to see somebody, and the cafeteria is pretty far away. So I always encourage people to bring food and snacks. And finally, nourish your mind. You're going to sit there in that waiting room and your mind is going to continue to spin until you get there, unless you can do something to nourish it. So bring something to read that is enjoyable, listen to your favorite podcast, or create a music playlist, and something that's either soothing or engages the fight in you. So if you're a fighter and you could play some kind of music that kind of revels you up, it'll release some of that anxiety. It'll release the anxiety so it doesn't present when you're sitting across from your provider. I'm going to invite us all to also practice breathing exercise. And I'm going to do it first as a way that I would highly recommend not doing it. And then I'm going to practice with you the way that I would recommend that you do it. So this is a breathing exercise. It's called 336 times 3. Easy enough to remember because the area code for Winston-Salem is 336. And you're going to breathe in for 3, you're going to hold for 3, and then you're going to breathe out for 6. And you're going to do it 3 times. The gift is that nobody's going to know you're doing it. So this is the wrong way to do it. Okay. That's a different kind of breathing exercise that I do in group, but we're not going to do that kind of breathing exercise. I'm going to help you. We're going to start on the count of 3, and you're going to look at me, and you're not going to know that I am doing any breathing. Okay. So we're going to start. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, hold. 1, 2, 3, and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, breathe in. 1, 2, 3, hold. 1, 2, 3, and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And one more time. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, hold. 1, 2, 3, and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you can, in the chat box, if you want to, just say how did that feel, or how have you managed your Scanxiety in the past? And I invite Lindy to open up the Q&A or the chat box.
Okay, it's open. No responses yet. Prayer is a very big one.
Good.
Someone said that breathing exercise felt good. They loved that exercise. Thanks for sharing. Meditation is another big one.
So finding some inner peace, connecting to a higher power, finding your center. Excellent. Thank you. So in all of this is to say that you're not alone. You're connected with people tonight, but you're connected with people all over the country. The prevalence of difficulties adjusting to cancer is fairly high. The 2020 Cancer General Registry found 50% of patients reported anxiety, 40% depression, 70% fear of cancer recurrence. So think about that. There's only 30% of you who don't have a fear of recurrence, 50% concerned with quality of life. And for your loved ones, your caregivers, they actually experience 50% anxiety as well. So it's a prevalence that is across the board. And that's why there's an ever increasing movement to bring more psychosocial oncology counselors and psychologists onto comprehensive cancer centers and other centers, so that you all have an opportunity to work through some of these difficulties. But as I spoke at the very beginning, there's an existential side to having a cancer diagnosis. So in a way, we're all alone, right? We have all these people who share similar experiences, but as we talked about, your cancer journey is a fairly individual one. And what that means is that there's existential concerns that Dr. Irvin Yalom identified. He's a psychiatrist from Stanford, has been practicing or was practicing. I think he's still practicing. He's like 91 years old. He is my guru, go-to guy. But he looks at existential concerns and worked quite a bit with patients going through cancer treatment out at Stanford, and worked specifically with women in breast cancer groups. And a lot of his research has to do with what he discovered while working with patients going through cancer treatment. And what he identified is 4 existential concerns. One is death, one is freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. And when he talks about death anxiety, he said we all have it. And we all sort of recognize that we have it at times when we've lost a loved one, at times when we have an illness, at times when there is a huge tragedy globally or nationwide. I mean, we just went through, or we're still in COVID, so it increases our death anxiety. And his idea is that how do we overcome death anxiety? How do we embrace the fact that we live here, much like the expiration date on the milk carton scenario I told you a patient brought to me, but we have to accept that we can't control the passage of time. We're here for a finite amount of time. And what he talks about is how to live an authentic life. And what does that mean to live an authentic life? He says, time cannot be broken. That is our greatest burden. And our greatest challenge is to live in spite of that burden. So sort of a double-edged sword, right? We can't change the passage of time. We can't change what lies on our path because time is time. But we can change and rise to the occasion of how we appreciate the beauty of nature and life, how we take time to each day to meditate, to pray, to reflect on your life journey. And I like that these are reflective of what folks were just saying before about how you manage your Scanxiety, meditation, prayer. So take time out for yourself. There's a famous saying by an existential philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, live every day of your life as if you know you will eternally repeat that life. Live every day of your life as if you know you will be eternally repeating your life. That's this idea of making the best of every day, even those that are full of struggle. The second existential concern is freedom. So as humans, we have a brain and we have the ability to make decisions. We are responsible for our day-to-day living. We are responsible for whether we take our medications. We are responsible for whether we show up for our radiation or our chemotherapy. We are responsible for whether or not we eat healthy food. That responsibility can weigh heavy because you also have to make choices. And if you become that deer in the headlights, if you become the frozen person in light of anxiety, it might be really difficult to make a decision. I use this example of the mule here, the donkey. There's a story, it's a parable about this donkey who is given 2 bales of hay. Bale of hay on the left side, bale of hay on the right side, equidistant from the donkey. The donkey is very hungry, and the donkey stares and stares and stares at the hay, looking from the left to the right, the left to the right. He can't make a decision, and so he begins to starve. The idea that we get frozen and stuck and paralyzed from making decisions is part of what weighs us down. It's part of our existential crisis that can happen when you're given a diagnosis and then you're given 4 or 5 different treatment options. And the oncologist says, I need you to make a decision tomorrow, right? Those are heavy decisions that you have to make. Viktor Frankl.
Lisa,
Yeah.
let me just interrupt real quick. One person mentioned that in your conversation, you mentioned how repetitive scans can be dangerous and you have to deal with that. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and the balance between the fear that the scans are going to be doing damage versus the fear the cancer is going to come back?
That's a good question. I don't think I said that. If I did, I would not say that the scans are dangerous as much as it's painful and it can be degrading. Let me see if I can go back to that slide. See if I can answer your question better here. I think it was this one. So invasive and degrading. Maybe one thought that it was dangerous.
Okay.
And lengthy and financial toxicity. Did that answer your question?
I'll let you know if they respond back.
Okay. Let me see if I can.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Let me go back here. Okay, here. So I don't know if anybody's heard of Viktor Frankl. He's considered the father of existentialism. And he worked alongside Sigmund Freud in Vienna, and he and his whole entire family were taken to concentration camps by the Nazis, and he was a sole survivor. And he was also a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, and wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, on how can you possibly live after what I experienced and lost everyone. And he believes that we have choices. And this is his quote: "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And I want to follow that by saying, this is not to say that we're encouraging, or I'm encouraging, what I call toxic positivity. This is about an inner strength that you foster for yourself. But I would never, and I encourage my clients and patients to avoid toxic positivity. And that means people who say, "Oh, come on, you got this, you're going to do this, oh, you've got this." And this idea that, giving sort of little light comments is going to make you feel better. And oftentimes it doesn't. It often has the exact opposite effect. So this isn't to say that you have to be cheery all the time and your attitude has to change. It's really about how you choose life with an attitude of working through struggles and working through suffering. And it means taking calculated risks, using those decision-making skills that you're learning and identifying and adapting to in this new life, and identifying the pros and the cons of a problem and making a decision that's right for you. Because then that brings your locus of control back to you, right? If you have an oncologist who's encouraging you to do one or this, and you have a really good conversation with that doctor, then you can take your own calculated risks and make a decision that is worthwhile for you and your family. Another of the existential concerns has to do with isolation. And Dr. Yalom identified 3. Interpersonal isolation, which is a lack of or a distancing from other people. And I have heard from so many patients that once I got cancer, I felt like either I had friends with a capital F and family with a capital F, or I had friends with small f and family with small f. There's certain people who can handle a life-threatening illness and can be by your side, and there's others who can't. And so those bonds with other people that were with you prior to a diagnosis might change. So you feel isolated. But you do what you're doing now, and you seek out people who have similar experiences. So you start to form new groups and new relationships to get away from that feeling of isolation. Intrapersonal can feel, that's about the self, and you feel isolated from the self. So when your body is turned over to a radiologist, a surgeon, a chemo nurse, you suddenly have lost connection with your body because somebody else is doing something to you. And that can feel very isolating. If you lose a breast, if you lose a limb, if you lose part of your colon, or you lose your ability to speak, you're disconnected from your body. You feel isolated from that wholeness that you had prior to a cancer diagnosis. And so the idea is to work with a therapist, work with a counselor to reconnect with the missing parts. And that's part of a grieving process. I don't have a lot of time to talk about that tonight, but it's a grieving of the loss and then coming back so that you don't continue to feel isolated from your own body. And then finally, there's an existential isolation that, you're separate from the world. You realize that you come into the world alone and you're eventually going to leave the world alone. And that's a spiritual, that's a religious, that's a higher power connection that is and is not connected with cancer. But how do you feel isolated being a human that at the end of the day, you go to sleep and everything in your head is just in your head? Dr. Yalom writes, to fully relate to another, one first must relate to oneself. If we cannot embrace our own aloneness, we will simply use the other as a shield against isolation. So this is where working in group and working with a counselor or working with a pastor or a rabbi or an imam can help you relate to yourself, recognize who you are, and then you can reach back out and get connected with community. So the idea is not to be an island. And through your own identity and your own beliefs, you can reach out and help others in need as well. A lot of the volunteers in our cancer center had cancer themselves or had loved ones with cancer. So they learned and they grew out of their experience and found meaning through their values, through their beliefs, and through their purpose in life. Simone de Beauvoir, who is one of the only women existential philosophers, she's French, was French, writes, one's life has value so long as one attributes value to the life of others. So it's part of that idea of being in service to others and living your life and let your behavior be the same as your beliefs. So determining what your values, your principles, and the beliefs are important to you, and then use them to drive actions, thoughts, and meaning. So if you go through cancer and you recognize that you would like to give back, you come to a group like this and you share with other people, or you join Immerman Angels, which is a wonderful national organization that connects people with the exact same cancer diagnosis to help them go through the process that you went through. Lots of opportunities to become involved as a way to find meaning through your suffering and through your own experiences. I'm keeping track of time. I think we're still doing fairly well here. Question, what provides meaning and purpose in your life? Lindy, if you could please open up the chat and feel free to share where you find meaning and purpose.
All right. Family, research projects and creative outlets. Family, faith, friends.
Excellent.
Pets.
Even
personal relationships, helping others, faith, spending time with grandchildren. This person has started making cards for shut-ins and widows and people who are sick and that they know are struggling.
Beautiful. Thank you all for sharing. So health-related quality of life comes into play when we think about the existential concerns and overall wellness. And health-related quality of life is a focus on physical, mental, emotional, and social functioning. And one of the main things that I focus on with my groups in particular, but also from the same lens with my individual outpatients, inpatients, and I also do couples work, is looking at a wellness wheel model and identifying. So if we go around the circle, right, all of you have touched upon many of these, right? Walking is physical, research and reading is intellectual, emotional is nourishing yourself with friends, which is also social, spiritual is prayer, meditation, yoga. We haven't talked about financial and environmental, but going out in nature, actually, somebody said. So what happens is if we look at this and you think of the wellness wheel as a bicycle, the front wheel of a bicycle. And if you ever remember, you had one of the spokes was bent or poked out, and suddenly it was really hard for you to move forward with your bicycle until you got it fixed. Well, if you think about your life going through cancer, and as a survivor, because you're all survivors, survivorship defined by American Cancer Society is from the minute you're diagnosed, you're a survivor. So you're all survivors. Your survivor journey, if any one of these things is like one of those spokes and it's sort of wrinkled or disregarded or ignored or giving you trouble, it's going to be hard for you to move forward on your individual wellness journey. And so we look at environmental. So the groups that I run at the Cancer Patient Support Program many of them are built on this model. So we break down, we look at these individually and exercise and identify ways that you can increase your wellness in all these 7 aspects. So environmental is personal and global space, indoor space, outdoor space, and green living, how you contribute to the betterment of the environment itself. We talk about financial wellness, vocational. Some people can't work when they're going through treatment. They might lose one income from a 2-family income. How do you arrange that? What happens when you lose your vocational or professional identity? How do you manage and navigate insurance and medical expenses? And how do you budget and plan for a future when the future right now seems so shaky? Those are kinds of things that we talk about in group. Social, many of you talked about how important it is to spend time with grandchildren, with family, with friends. That's all ways that you can enhance and boost your social wellness. And support groups are one of those. Physical. We didn't talk a lot about physical tonight, but you have fatigue, you have chemo brain, exercise and nutrition are 2 things that can really improve some of the side effects of the treatment. So we work through that as well, and think about and visualize your life in terms of what can you do to become physically active. Emotional wellness, first and foremost, like yourself. Yalom says you have to know yourself and accept yourself in order to be able to be kind toward others. Flexibility and adaptability. I think all of you here must be absolute A+ flexible and adaptable human beings because you've made it here. And cancer is anything but trying in terms of having schedules and routines. Self-care is important. It can be a bubble bath. It can be a walk in the park. It can be taking a nap in the afternoon if you need it. And you can go to counseling to increase your wellness capacity. Spiritual, many of you brought up the importance of faith, the importance of prayer, importance of meditation, meaning and purpose in life, giving back. Your beliefs, your values, your ethics are all part of this spiritual realm that connects us to others, connects us to a higher power, connects us to the world, and makes whatever suffering we have, we can find meaning and purpose out of that, as Viktor Frankl said.
So one person mentioned that how COVID just sucked the life out of their recovery, that they were diagnosed and COVID came along in the same month. And it was just like a major double whammy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I thank that person for raising that as an issue. The last 2+ years have been most difficult for people who have gotten diagnoses during this period because that social wellness that we talked about here, that's so important, most people were cut off because of fear of contracting COVID. And so groups, right? We're all doing this virtually. I don't think this is ever going to go away, but I attended face-to-face sessions with folks at Cancer Services before COVID. So absolutely, you had higher risk of infection and complications from COVID-19. So most people who were diagnosed in the early days or even during the last 2.5 years with cancer have been very fearful, and it's only increased, right? You have dual threats. You have the threat of cancer and you have the threat of COVID-19, and it's a really difficult time. And I really I did a group with Dr. Duckworth for young adults facing cancer and COVID the first year of COVID. I think it was the second year of COVID anyway. And some of the things that came out was the resilience of the folks in the group, because they had been diagnosed prior to COVID. COVID was no longer a threat, but those who were diagnosed after COVID started had a greater difficulty in going through the process of treatment because they were so isolated. That's a really good question. Thank you for sharing. Any other questions before we come to the end? Okay, if there are any, you can always add to the chat box or Q&A. Connecting all of these areas and aspects of wellness is mindfulness. And John Kabat-Zinn, who is a world leader in mindfulness-based practices, calls mindfulness the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So it's this idea, it goes back to Dr. Yalom, right? To self-understand enables us to reach out and break through some of these existential concerns we talked about. And so through mindfulness walking, you're paying attention, you're non-judgmental, you're in the present moment, and you gain wisdom and you gain peace from that. What I would like to do is I would like you to get comfortable. And we're going to do a very brief, but I think hopefully calming meditation. It's called a guided meditation, and you can find these on the internet. If you need help, I can always answer questions as to where you can find good resources. But if you can just sit calmly wherever you are, get comfortable. You can keep your eyes open if you like. You can soften your gaze or close your eyes. It's completely up to you. We can't see you. But what I want you to think about is that there's a golden string at the top of your head and it's connected to the ceiling. And it's going to keep your arms, your shoulders straight and your head straight. And I just want you to focus on your breath for a moment. No exaggerated breathing, just like we did 3, 3, 6 times 3, just regular breathing. You might even bring your hand to your heart. See if you can feel your heart beating. Get reconnected with your body. Sometimes you might feel like your body has abandoned you or betrayed you because you have cancer, but it's still your body. And it's you. It belongs to you. You belong to it. Listen to your breath. Feel your heartbeat. And I want you to think of your favorite tree. It can be any season. It can be spring, summer, fall, winter. What does that tree look like? Picture that tree. And I want you to think of those roots of that tree. Tentacles digging deep into this beautiful red clay of North Carolina. And it establishes its foundation, its base, its strength. It's rooted to its environment. It's rooted to its community. And I want you to imagine your feet are like those roots. You're grounded. You stand tall because you have grounding and a foundation And what do you do to nourish that? How do you nourish? For trees, it's water, it's light, it's warmth. What do you need to nourish your strength? It might be love, it might be faith, it might be light, it might be humor. Humor is a wonderful way to adapt and deal with uncertainty and anxiety. How do you nourish your feet like you nourish the roots of that beautiful tree? And I want you to move up your legs over your hips and end up at the trunk of your body, your abdomen, which keeps you standing tall, much like the trunk of a tree helps the tree stand tall. And the tree is wrapped with bark, holds the tree tightly together so all of its nutrients and all of its working parts move. What is your bark? Who are the people or things, experiences that hug you like bark, hold you together and keep you standing strong? It might be family, it might be your dog, it might be a neighbor, it might be a spiritual leader, it might be a teacher or a mentor. Who hugs you and holds you tight, even in difficult times, helps keep you strong? And now I want you to think about your arms like the branches of a tree. We live in North Carolina and we know that we can have hurricanes, high winds, we can even have snow. And those tree branches bend and bow and wave to high winds, and it stabilizes the tree, much like your arms stabilize you. What are the stabilizing factors in your life? What keeps you adaptable, flexible, resilient? It might be the same things that nourish you. It might be the same thing that hugs you. What is it that keeps your arms floating and bending with anything that comes up as a challenge or an obstacle? I want you to picture this tree, which is you, in all 4 seasons, because we all go through different seasons. Sometimes it's full of life. Sometimes things are ending. Sometimes things are frozen. And sometimes things are moving forward, new beginnings. Whenever you feel this Scanxiety coming on, or the uncertainty of recurrence, remember that you are like that strong tree. And each season brings different challenges. But you always have the nourishment, you always have the bark, you always have that adaptability and flexibility within you. I encourage you to pause for a moment, and when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Take a deep breath. Imagine yourself not judgmentally being in the present moment, like that tree. Okay, so I'm going to leave with this poster, which are the different groups that we provide at Cancer Patient Support Program at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist. Some are ongoing, some are in the works. We're going through a whole new, we have a new director, so we're having a new strategic plan and bringing new programming on. So if they aren't happening yet, we are taking names for a wait list and we'll contact you when the group starts. Also encourage you to continue to participate in the cancer services programming, which is stellar. And it gives you an opportunity to connect with a lot of people who not only care about each other, but have gone through similar journeys. So I open it up for a few quick questions. Here's my contact information, and I'll leave that with Lindy as well. And I think maybe I'll just stop sharing and come back to questions if anybody has anything.
Anybody having questions for Lisa? Thank you so much. That's so beneficial, and we really appreciate it so much. Several thank yous in the chat box.
Absolutely.
We love it when we can partner with our partner hospitals and cancer centers, as well as Hearst Wellness Network in Greensboro. And we are partnering with them tomorrow at 3 o'clock for Wellness Wednesday. And they're taking us through a Tai Chi exercise, as well as some restorative breathing exercises. So please join us back tomorrow. That's Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon. We will also be recording that session, and we will send the links out when they are available so that you will have access to all of the programs from Survivors Week. And let me get back to the chat box.
Sounds like you've got a great week for everybody.
We do. It's going to be, or it already is going great.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have lots of thank yous, and thanks for the information. Thanks for helping us cope. So we really appreciate you being with us tonight and sharing with us.
Absolutely. I thank you for inviting me. I look forward to being invited back, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just want to let everybody know that we provide services regardless of what hospital you're in, anywhere in North Carolina. All of our services for group work is free and open. So even if you're being treated at one of our sister hospitals, all of our group work is free. And you just have to be a resident of North Carolina because our licenses don't go across borders. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and I hope to see you tomorrow afternoon. Take care.